Can't believe some people.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum listeners, brothers and sisters, welcome back to Salaam Radio 106.2 FM. Again, a warm welcome to our Luton listeners via Inspire FM 105.1. You're listening to Friday Night Prime and your host, as usual, Amr Sulaiman. And this week, very privileged to say my daughter, Jannat Sulaiman. Assalamu alaikum again, Jannat.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So earlier on, just before the Maghrib Azan, I was telling you that we're very privileged and honoured to have the writer, producer and director of a very important film that's being released shortly called Frisia, which is a film covering the ever-prevalent and rising issue, sadly, of Islamophobia. Let me tell you a bit about Conor Ibrahim. So he began as a professional actor, starring in programmes such as EastEnders and Coronation Street, and then started a second career as a script writer alongside acting, leading up to working for a South Asian theatre company. And all the while he was becoming more devout to his faith and decided to garner all his skills and desire to give something back and to be an instigator of positive change, to redress the negativity that many Muslim characters face in film, TV and theatre productions. And he did that by setting up a company called Arakan Creative, which is the firm behind the film Frisia, which we'll get to know more about in our interview. Now, despite Arakan Creative never receiving core funding, Conor's built up a very impressive portfolio of work, and his work has gained many sort of prime recognition over the years, such as being shortlisted for ATL's New Business of the Year Award, winner of Mosaic's Arts and Culture Award, winner of Best New Filmmaker at the Canadian Diversity Film Festival, and winner of Best First Time Filmmaker at the Auckland International Film Festival. So, mashallah, you know, great work that he's done and achieved. Now, in 2014, Conor decided to expand the company's operation into film production, producing his writing and producing directorial debut, Frisia, which is a social realism drama and the first UK film to address, as I said, the ever prevalent issue of Islamophobia. I'm told a sequel is currently being written, and the hope is that Arakan can become known for producing low budget but high quality social realism films that look at the Muslim story. So very intriguing topics to discuss today. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on air brother Conor. Assalamu alaikum, Conor. I hope you can hear me.
Wa alaikum assalam. Good evening to you.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the platform.
No. It's great. It's great to have you on board and talking about a topic which is very close to Salaam Radio's heart. It's something we've covered a great deal with various guests being from the police and people who were former, right-wing activists and have sort of seen the error of their ways. So it's a topic that we've covered at great length. But let's get straight into it. First of all, many congratulations on Frisia the movie and its distribution and release. I know the film is getting a lot of attention, and you've been busy on the media trail, as it were, appearing just this morning on BBC Breakfast with some great national coverage, mashallah. So it's, it was a good interview and great to see the film being covered nationally.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question which I'm very curious about. Now, I could be wrong and you'll correct me if I am, but am I right in saying that the film was made actually a couple of years ago but has only now been picked up for distribution? Is that correct?
Yes, it was produced in 2014. I mean, the final cut wasn't ready till 2015. So it was a couple of years in the making. But of course, it spent about a year and a half on the film festival circuit, both at home and abroad.
Right.
So sometimes these things can be delayed.
Right.
But of course, the nature of the film and the fact that it's got no, I suppose, international superstars attached,
yeah,
and of course, by the nature of the content, would mean that it's a harder sell to distributors both within the UK and beyond. And I certainly have discovered that. I've knocked on so many doors, my hand is blue with pain. But as Allah knows best, sometimes things happen at the right time. The distribution deal was actually arranged in February this year by another distributor, Film Vault. Now, thankfully, Allah, blessed us with this arrangement because they were able to recognise the potential and the market it can serve. And then, of course, lo and behold, Finsbury Park happens a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So, sometimes unfortunate events of magnitude can have that ripple effect on projects, and I hope it can go some way in redressing the problem.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, do you think now, I mean, is this a fair comment to say that the film was picked up more recently because of how prevalent an issue Islamophobia has sadly become? Do you think that played a major part in the film?
I don't think so. I think the distributor picked it up because he recognised there was a market for it. Obviously, the issue is an important one and is very, it's very prevalent even early this year before Finsbury Park, in a sense, put it on the map. Of course, it's been trickling away for years, verbal, physical, masjids being attacked, etc. So it's been very much in the limelight. So that wasn't the core reason, though, to kind of bring it to fruition in a distribution sense. But it was obviously recognised that there is a market and that this issue is very much today.
Interesting. Okay.
First of all, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Connor. It's an honour to be interviewing you.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, when you set out to make Frisia, I imagine you must have had a key objective in mind. So I'm curious to know what this objective was and whether you found this objective changing throughout the process of making the film.
The objective was threefold. The funding covered 3 years to produce 3 different creative outlets.
Right.
So year one was a theatre play, looking at the beginnings of Islamophobia, because obviously this is not a new phenomenon. The word may be, but the issue is not. Our dear Prophet, may Allah rest him, he obviously suffered untold physical and verbal abuse in his time. So that's really where it started. So the theatre play was set in 7th century Arabia, 1 month after his passing. Right. He was not featured, nor were his wives or his companions, may Allah rest them all. It was very sensitively done. So that was year one. And then year two was going to be originally 3 short films. But I thought, what else can I do with this? And obviously, being a champion of independent film who wants to punch above its weight, and inspired by the likes of El Mariachi, Paranormal Activity, which have produced films on very, very low budgets but have had massive impact. Yeah. I thought, well, if they can do that, surely I can give it a good crack. And of course, I recognised that the reach of film, feature film, it would supersede a short film and a theatre play no ends. Yeah. So I thought, well, that's what I need to do. And with the blessing of the funders, I was able to realise that ambition, and we cracked straight on with it. And then year 3 will, inshallah, be the release of a new comic book aimed at primary school children, featuring Abrahamic superheroes.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, wow, mashallah. That sounds intriguing.
Yes, it's almost due to launch. There's been slight delays with the design phase, but we're nearly there with it, and I'm very excited to launch that very soon.
Mashallah, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that, and maybe that's a whole other interview when that happens, inshallah.
Absolutely, yes.
That's fantastic. So, when you were making this film, and you had those clear objectives, but now that the film's complete and it's been picked up and it's going to be released on August the 7th at selected cinemas, who do you see as the target audience for this film? Is there a target audience? Do you think it's universal for everyone in terms of people will pick up different things from the movie?
Of course. Well, in no particular order, yes, the audience ideally would be universal, but recognizing the issues within the film, naturally our audiences will primarily look at the Muslim audiences. But equally, we are looking to bring in people on the far right, people who have got distrust, even hatred toward Muslims and the faith by which we live, in order that they may actually put aside their ignorances for the next 91 minutes and take a chance and be bold and be brave and think, you know what, maybe I've misjudged this community, maybe they're not all as bad as it seems, maybe I'm wrong to judge the majority based on the actions of a minority. So I'm hoping that they will actually be brave enough to come in the door, watch the film and engage with it in an open setting and reflect. Whether they're going to change, inshallah, we'll see. But the fact is that if they're willing to suspend hatred for that amount of time, then that's a step in the right direction. So those are the kind of the 2 key areas I am looking to enhance the audience footfall. But of course, it is universal. It's for people who love independent film, social realism, championing North, and anyone who loves a good yarn, really. I mean, it's all about good storytelling ultimately.
No, absolutely. And I noticed in some of the material when I was doing research that I think I can quote it. It says, forgive me, it says, think Ken Loach with a mosque hat. And I love that. I love that line because I'm a huge Ken Loach fan. I, Daniel Blake being his most recent, which I've seen and I thought was an amazing film. I'm assuming you're a fan of Ken Loach, and I've yet to see Frisia, but will I see kind of similarities in your style of directing?
Perhaps. I mean, Ken Loach is more the inspiration for really tapping into a genre of film so successfully and honestly That's really what inspired me, and that's how I coined that phrase.
Right.
Because I think different countries which are kind of champions of film are known for different things, and I think here in Britain, social realism is something that we've actually we kind of fly the flag for that.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it seemed like a logical fit to try and do something obviously on a very modest budget, and social realism is achievable on modest budgets.
Yeah.
And it's really about capturing his spirit of what he brings to real life. And Daniel Blake being his latest masterpiece. And of course, it just goes to show that you can, I suppose, not over-educate, because it needs to be ultimately a film that's entertaining, but you can certainly pack a punch, and you can help change perceptions through the power of film. And I hope to encapsulate and capitalize on that kind of way of working in a film sense.
No, absolutely. And you touched on budget there. The budget for this film was around 27,000. I think I heard this morning on your interview. Is that right? Which is
right.
Incredibly low budget. I mean, you've achieved what seems like the impossible with such a low budget.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the standard budget for a British feature film, anywhere between $500,000 and $5 million.
Right.
Which obviously is dwarfed by Hollywood budgets, of course.
Yeah.
But over here, that's the kind of standard budget for a decent film. So we were operating on about 1%.
Wow.
Now, in this day and age, access to digital software, cameras, etc., is obviously not as dear as it used to be. It's very affordable, accessible.
Yeah.
So really, you've got to look at what you can achieve right within your means. If it's a social realism, don't obviously put in flying saucers and special effects. You're gonna kind of fall flat on your face. So it was very achievable, even though it's a minuscule amount. Of course, there were challenges that came with that. I had to convince all the cast and crew to work for minimum wage, and obviously we had to get some things in kind. We were very fortunate to have Milo Hawes, the caterer, offer catering in kind.
Wow.
Some locations we were able to get at a very good discount. We shot within a very local area, Bradford, Keighley and Leeds. So basically we made that money go as far but as close as home as it possibly could. It was very much achievable. A lot of it was in kind, as I say.
Yeah.
I think it's not always the best way to model a film finance plan by any stretch of the imagination. But of course, when it comes to an issue-based film, if you get the right people on board who believe in the cause, then your team is complete.
Yeah, and you've got a great cast on board, and I think the most recognisable cast member will be Aqib Khan of West is West fame, who is on board. And for all I've seen is a trailer and a few clips, but it looks like a solidly powerful performance from young Aqib.
Indeed, I mean, Aqib I met a few years prior to making Frasier on a short film, and being a Bradford boy as I am, we kept in contact, and I was hoping that I could at least have him read the script and at best come on board, given the fact that it was a low budget. And thankfully, he liked what he read and he agreed. So by Allah's blessing, he obviously put the wind in our sails.
Yeah.
And he did a sterling job. And I have to credit all of the casting crew for they really rose to the challenge, given the fact that they were dealing with a 3 or 4 day turnaround per story.
Wow.
13 days of filming is all we had time for, really. So I had to make sure that the takes were 1, 2, 3 takes maximum. I had to be very, very right. Time, guys. That's it. Done. Next.
Yeah.
So obviously with the quality there, but I had to make sure that we went at it full steam ahead, and that momentum was able to then be kind of snowballing throughout the 13-day period. Obviously, the other cast, some were easy to find in the sense that I'd worked with some before. Some were people I've met on my travel, shown an interest in performing, and we got a couple from London farther afield, because my northern search for actors was exhausted, and we just couldn't find Khadija, who played the lead in one of her stories,
right.
Our mother. But by Allah's blessing, we were blessed with the perfect cast members in the end, and I couldn't have wished for better.
Alhamdulillah, fantastic.
Following on from earlier when you said that Frasier falls into the subgenre of Islamic social realism, I think you've definitely achieved this realism by, honestly portraying the positive and negative sides of both communities. But what was the moment when you realised that there was this gap in British Asian narrative that needed to be addressed with a film such as Frasier? I
think you only have to look at the current landscape of British film to see the gaps in there. I mean, that's not to take away from the films that have been produced. There's always comedy in our lives. We always need to have a good giggle sometimes.
Definitely.
Got the East is East and the West is West, and the Bending Like Beckham's. I know about the more serious issue-based films like Catch Me Daddy or Honor, films that tackle real issues. But I wanted to come at it, I suppose, even more realistically. For example, in an Asian household, the chances of them all speaking English all the time is just not realistic. No. And for me, in particular, the masjid scene, if it's a mosque committee, the chances are they're going to speak Urdu or Punjabi 90% of the time with smatterings of English. So I wanted to make sure that it was a real reflection, without putting on any Hollywood stardust on it or any kind of extra cinematic flair,
right?
Because it is a real story. It's not a real story. I mean, it's a real issue-based film, and I wanted to make sure that there was no airy fairiness about it. It was, and people have said, it feels like it's a real film, and that for me was one of my key objectives, and I'm blessed that was able to be achieved.
No, that's great, and. You've touched on this just now, but what has been the reaction so far by the screenings that have taken place? I mean, what's the general consensus been around what the objective of the film is, and just generally, what have people thought about the movie?
Mashallah, it's been minimum 80% positive, and that's based on 6 private screenings we've had throughout the UK in 2015/16.
Yeah,
and we've gauged that data from feedback forms we gave out afterwards, and basically. It was a simple case of dividing the piles into positive and negative,
right.
And then just weighing up the averages, and consistently it was a minimum of 79-80% across the board. And the comments range from, as I mentioned, it felt real, powerful, emotional, fair and thought-provoking were actually the most commonly both used terms throughout the feedback forms. But again, which I'm grateful for, because I like to approach things as fairly as possible. Inshallah, as and when, or if and when you come to see the film, I don't shy away from issues within my own community.
No.
Because of course it's okay looking at someone who hates us in the far right and just ignoring their words and focusing on their anger. But some of the things that they're raising need to be looked at. If they're calling us groomers and terrorists, if those are issues within our community, then we need to just calm down a little bit and say, where are those issues and what's going on? If our boys and girls are involved, we need to take care of that. And we shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't deflect the issues that we are kind of brushing away sometimes. And that, again, that's not to take away from the community champions who are addressing these issues. Alhamdulillah, may God bless them in their efforts.
Yeah.
So the film looks both ways. Because the less fuel we're giving to the far right and those who hate us, the less reason they'll have to point the finger at us.
No, absolutely. And you make a very strong point there, brother. I mean, unfortunately, it's a sad fact in our communities across the UK. A lot of these issues are tending to be swept under the carpet or ignored, and not much is done to challenge it. And what I am pleased to see is that certainly it's happening in Peterborough, is that working groups are being formed to rise up against the real issue of Islamophobia. And MEND is an organisation that you know well, as I'm sure our listeners do, that are doing great work in that area. And MEND is a working group that's been formed literally as we speak in Peterborough to rise up against that. So it's interesting what you say about your objectives for this film, and that it will have some real meaning to viewers, and hopefully change hearts and minds. I mean, that is a very powerful objective to have, and I hope, to be honest, even if it changes one person's opinion, it's achieved.
The job's done.
The job is done. Brother Donna, please stay with us. We have to take a short ad break. Listeners, you're listening to Friday Night Prime with myself, Ahmed Suleiman, and my co-host this week, Jannat Suleiman. We're talking to Connor Ibrahim, writer, producer, director of a film which I'm sure you've heard about, which is Frisia, a film tackling the issue of Islamophobia. He's going to stay with us for the second half from 9:30 towards the end of the show, and we're going to be covering, inshallah, a lot more with him. And you can get involved. 07745 278 978 is the number to WhatsApp any comments you may have. But inshallah, we'll be back with you in about 4 minutes.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Please give your brothers and sisters in the developing world the gift of clean, safe water. They can use it for drinking, for cooking, for watering their crops, and even for their livestock and animals. They'll also use the water that you provide them to make wudu. Log on to our website, pennyappeal.org, or call on 03000 11 11 11.
City Homes Estate Agents are your #1 independent family-owned agency in Peterborough. We offer a range of services including buying, selling, letting, mortgages and conveyancing. Why not call us today and find out for yourself why our customers return time and time again. We have a track record for achieving some of the highest prices in and around the area for our clients. With over 10 years of operating in the area, we are the experts in this market. Put us to the test today by calling 01733 348 677 and quote discount code RADIO for our exclusive rates for this promotion. City Homes, bringing people together for over 10 years.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
You have one new message.
Please, can you call me, please, for God's sake? I'm really in trouble. Please, Allah the Wasta, call me.
This was a real message. It was left not just for us, but for you. Thousands of our brothers and sisters in the UK are crying out for your help. Don't hang up on them. Find out more and fulfill your third pillar with us. Visit nzf.org.uk. National Zakat Foundation, serving zakat payers and recipients nationwide.
Gems and jewels. Wise sayings, interesting events, and moral lessons from Islamic history. Allah's angels.
The famous and eminent companion, Abdullah ibn Salaam, radiyallahu anhu, was a righteous Jew before the coming of Islam, and in fact was a known scholar for his religion. He accepted Islam with great sincerity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, "You have two rewards, one for your previous religion, and the second for this time after your acceptance of Islam." Many years later, those who were rebellious during the caliphate of Uthman radiyallahu anhu wanted to kill him. Abdullah ibn Salam said to them, "O people, do not unsheath your sword against him, for if you do, you will not put them back in their sheaths. Your leader today stands with a shield, but if you kill him, he will stand with a sword. Woe unto you! Indeed, Al-Medina is surrounded by angels, and if you kill him..."
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Friday Night Prime here on Salaam Radio 106.2 FM. And again, welcome to our Luton listeners at Inspire FM 105.1. We're also on Facebook Live. You can download the app from iPhone and Android apps, the Salaam Radio app, or you can listen to us online, salamradio.co.uk. There's many ways you can tune in. There's really no excuse not to tune in. We've been talking to Connor Ibrahim, the writer, producer and director of the film Frisia, which has been in the press. I'm sure you've heard about the film, which is tackling the issue of Islamophobia. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to go straight back into Brother Connor. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Welcome back.
Welcome, Salaam. Thank you.
I hope the ads weren't too painful for you.
No, I'll be honest, I wasn't listening to half of them. I was busy doing some Facebooky stuff.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Well, straight back in, and I think Jannat's got a question for you initially.
Yeah, definitely. Before the break, we were sort of touching upon how Frisia's quite symbolic for the time, for the impact, for the landscape that we've got going on at the moment. Following on from symbols, I've read that for the Frisia flowers in the film represent friendship and innocence, and you've made a point of placing them in the background of each of the three households for each of the three narratives. And I wanted to know whether you were drawn to using the symbol of a Frisia in some sort of way, or did you just come across it? What drew you to Frisias in the first place?
Okay, I like that question. I always like the question because it kind of digs deep into the thought process behind the title.
Yeah.
What inspired me initially to think of something different for the title was a film called Tyrannosaur by Paddy Considine, which was made a few years ago about domestic violence. Okay. Now, the title has nothing to do with domestic violence, Tyrannosaur. You'd think, well, dinosaurs, but within the film, it's revealed what connection it has to the story. Similarly, I wanted to do something with this film. I could have gone for the obvious choice of calling it, I don't know, Islamophobia or something like that.
Yeah.
So I sat with the dictionary and I went through it from A to Z. I thought, what kind of word could I possibly use? And when I got to F, I found freesia. So I thought, sounds nice, got a nice ring to it, and what does it mean? And it transpired that it was a perfect fit because, of course, it echoed the stories, and you rightly mentioned the symbolism of freesia, but in addition to that, it's also something you give to those who cope well under pressure.
Right.
So it's got a lot of sentiment behind the giving, and of course that encapsulates the struggles of the characters in the film. So that was the kind of thought process and the reason I chose the title of the film. Now, of course, if I do make 2 sequels, I've got to stick to that and call the next two plants as well. Would be, of course.
No, absolutely, that's great. You mentioned Paddy Considine, who's a great actor. I was unaware he directed a film, so it's not one that I was aware of. And this was about domestic violence.
Yes, it was made, I think it was 2011, 2012. It was shot in Leeds. It gave a platform to Olivia Colman, who's obviously
oh wow,
a household name now.
Yeah.
I forget the other male lead in the film, but it's a very good film. Again, social realism.
Yeah.
Credit to him, it won a string of awards, accolades. And again, it's something that was an inspiration as well, because again, shot in the north, on relatively speaking low budget in film terms, and it packed a real punch across the globe, not just locally. So films like that do resonate with me, and that was obviously then subliminally feeding into the thought process of the title, as I mentioned.
Yeah, interesting. You talk about talent up north and talent down south, and being in the film industry. What is that split like? I mean, do you find there's a lot more hidden talent, untapped talent up north than there is down south? Quite an obvious statement, but do you find that to be the case?
I wouldn't say I've done exhaustive studies on how much talent there is or undiscovered. All I know is that wherever you go, no matter if it's a community, a city, no matter large or small, there'll always be someone who has a skill.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter what that skill would be. In this context, we're talking acting, or in a crewing sense, directing, DOP, sound technicians, etc. Yes, they do tend to congregate down in London because that's the big smoke. That's where things happen. That's our Hollywood, if you like, for film. And I admit, I tried to get down there for 10 years when I was an actor. But of course, then what happens is you become a brain drain for your local area. And if everyone goes and joins a big queue, you can be stood around for a long time.
Yeah.
And thankfully, obviously, things have trickled more up north, and rightly so. They should have been doing that many, many years ago. So now you've got Media City in the north, and there's talk of maybe Channel 4 allocating an office up north as well.
Okay.
Yorkshire is very busy with films being shot locally in Yorkshire because it's got great varied locations and costs are a little cheaper as well. So I would say that there's talent all over the place.
Yeah.
And I love finding undiscovered talent because I always had a little pipe dream that perhaps someone would discover me as an undiscovered.
Right.
You hear about it in the films and you see it as plot lines, but very seldom does it happen. So if I'm in a position to offer the opportunity to someone who deserves it, not for the sake of looking right, I'll always just put on their merits.
Right.
Then that's a privileged position, and I have to say that in terms of the film. I suppose there's quite a few people in there, particularly Matthew Thomas, who played the young antagonist in one of the stories.
Okay.
He was only 15 at the time, and he was still at school. He's only just left.
Wow.
The local Keighley lad, and he had aspirations, and still does, as far as I know, to be an actor.
Yeah.
He mentioned this in a workshop I was doing in another project, and I remember the comment, and I thought he's got something, and I auditioned him, and he was perfect for the part. So I'm hoping that this can be a platform for him, much like West is West was for Akib Khan.
Yeah.
So in short, there's talent everywhere. It's a case of just putting the feelers out, having a project that you can draw them into, and then bringing the best out of them. And that's a director's job, really, is just being able to draw out the best of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful when you find people who fit perfectly into projects like this, but it's a perfect match sometimes with projects like Freesia. You've got all this undiscovered talent, and it's people like you who give them the opportunity, I suppose, to showcase their talent. So that's important, I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talking about Frasier in line with other films in the British Asian narrative, I'd believe it's worlds apart from films like Four Lions or Bend It Like Beckham, like we were mentioning earlier. And I've read that it's this enlightenment that you're aiming to achieve with Frasier, and you seem quite passionate about it being used by schools and education providers, you know, to educate people like myself, young people like myself, who either Muslim or non-Muslim are unfortunately being swayed by the climate at the moment. But what is it that makes you confident that Frasier will succeed educationally where other films have not?
Because I believe that if you come from a place of sincerity and you speak from the heart, you connect with somebody else.
Yeah.
And that is something I bring to all my work. You rightly mentioned the educational aspect. That's always been the idea and shall be, and it's already started in a sense. The film has been delivered to a school in Gloucester last year and was well received. And there's a workshop element that comes with that, and I'm in talks with the local council to do some more with the schools as well. That's always been the aim of the work, as I think I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Education combined with entertainment, because even some of the big films in Hollywood, you can take some learning from them. Obviously they don't focus on that, and it's not saturated with preachy stuff, and I think in some ways it shouldn't be, because when you go to the cinema on a Friday, you want to kick back with a box of popcorn, you don't want to think about the worries of the world and think you're in school again. So the last thing I want to do is kind of tilt the balance the other way. But it's something that I think is very powerful, especially in this day, in the digital age. So many young people are in tune with Facebook, social media, videos. So it's a language they understand.
Yeah.
And so if you can spread a little bit of good, decent moral behavior, fantastic, in amongst the rap music or whatever the hip thing is now, the latest block. So I very much... I'm in tune with that, and I don't think that'll ever leave me. I think I'll always have an element of educational kind of focus in what I do.
Yeah, it's important. I think you can see, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the film yet, but when I do, it sounds very much like you've made it very family friendly in the way that it can raise the right issues, but it's still comfortable to watch, if you know what I mean.
I would say so. It's got a 12A rating from the BBFC.
Right.
I was very mindful of that, actually. It's a good thing you raised this, because in order to write and cater for a young audience as well as a more mature audience, you have to make sure it's not saturated with bad language, violence, illicit behaviour, that kind of thing. And I think some films go in the wrong direction with that. And automatically they're no-nos for schools and in some members of the public as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of films need that. I think it's just there for the sake of selling tickets. You don't need to rely... You should rely on a good story. First and foremost, good story is there's no need, unless it's set in a gang-related situation or whatever. I don't think you need excessive amounts of violence, swearing, or this, that, and the other. And of course, thinking from an Islamic point of view, you've got to make sure you're catering to an audience who are aware of these issues, and they don't want to grab the remote with the grandma in the room, as is the case. I'm sure you understand and you relate to this, as most, if not all, the Muslim listeners. Hopefully, they can understand that point. So that's another thing I'm thinking about as well.
Yeah.
And just make it as widely appealing as possible. That's not to say I won't do anything in future that kind of, I suppose, dares to go a bit nearer to the edge.
Sure.
But still, I would like to think within Islamic and common sense boundaries. And so, inshallah, we'll see what prevails. But that's the core of me, and that will obviously manifest itself again in any work I do.
No, that's great. If I may, I just want to touch on the fact that you had the screening in a school in Gloucester. And then you had the subsequent workshop. What sort of comments were you getting from the kids? What age kids were involved in this workshop?
There were secondary school children. I think they were minimum 15 upwards.
Okay.
It was the first time Frasier had an outing. It was about September, I believe, last year. I've been invited back next year as well, inshallah. This was a predominantly white school, maybe 2 or 3% minority. It was, alhamdulillah, it was very well received. And particularly the workshop, I says, look, kids, ask me anything you want. You won't offend me. Praying on your mind, talk about the film, anything you want to throw at me, that's fine. They broke into groups and they discussed it, and we had a good Q&A. And one of the bits that sticks with me, and I forget which child now, obviously, which raised it, but there was this notion that obviously the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah rest him, was known for violence, and he was a nasty person in general. And I wanted to dispel that myth there and then, and I gave him the antidote of the story, and I'm sure many listeners know of it. For those that don't, it goes something like this. He obviously used the house pretty much every day, and an old lady would throw rubbish on him, and he never raised his voice, as far as I know. He never retaliated. And then one day, the rubbish throwing stopped, and he was curious, where is this person who keeps harassing me? Why has she just vanished? And of course, the story goes that she was ill, and he went and helped her.
Yeah.
And of course, then she changed her tune, and then she realised that she was being very heartful and judgmental on a person who was really genuine. And you could just see the looks on their faces. They were genuinely surprised by that. And it's that little gem moment. So I thought, that's perfect. Because I'm hoping now they'll carry that forward.
Yeah.
And if anyone dares to try and hijack our beautiful faith and the character of our prophet by saying he was this, this, and this, they'll hopefully remember this little anecdote when this guy came down from Bradford one day in September 2016, and they can dispel that and shoot down that misconception before it grows into something more nasty.
Fantastic. And a lot of our mosques, I'm talking about Peterborough, a lot of our mosques do great outreach work to people of other faiths or no faith through open days or events and seminars, etc. And these questions do come up from people of all ages, and it's absolutely right, and it's so powerful, more than we'll probably know and realise, just how much you can change someone's mind and perception, because they have this ignorant outlook. It's a lack of education, cultural awareness, whatever you want to call it. But all it takes is them to ask a question and for somebody to put them right. And it's a little thing like that, as you've just so beautifully said, that can actually change someone's mindset completely. And I think it's a wonderful thing. So I hope you do more of the school tours. I really do, because I think it's very much needed. Sadly, but I think it is needed. So
no, indeed, inshallah, we'll see what prevails, but that's certainly the intention.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll see what tomorrow brings in that respect.
Inshallah. Let's go back. Let's kind of go all the way back to the beginning now. We've got about around 10, 12 minutes left. How did it all begin for you? What was your journey that led you up to starting Arakan Creative? I mean, I touched upon it in your bio at the beginning, but if you could put it in your own words.
Well, briefly, the passion to enter the world of media and the arts started with Christopher Reeve, may God rest him.
Okay.
I used to sit in my sledge in the living room in Bradford and watch Superman every Christmas.
Right.
And I think, you know what? I want to be part of that world where a man can fly and beat the bad guys and bad girls and change the world for the better. And of course, that was something that was never going to be achieved, despite my attempts of putting the towel around my neck and jumping off the sofa and landing flat on my face. But of course, that was the start of my journey. Thinking, you know what, I want to enter that world. And it wasn't until my teens where I did some Amdram in local drama clubs. Yeah. And then, of course, I went to college and studied performing arts, and then I entered the professional world of acting in '99. 10 years, I gave it my best shot. You know, as you mentioned before, I've run stints on EastEnders, Corrie, Brookside, as was, Family Affair.
Wow.
Things, and DL and Pasco, Bad Girls. And I had a small part in Honour as well, the film I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
So, God had a better plan for me, and at that point, I couldn't think of anything else I'd rather do but act. And then I went to Hajj in 2006, mashallah, and I said, look, I put my hands up and says, okay, look, if there's something better for me, you know it, and bring me to that path. And if that means it's not acting, then so be it. And it was very hard for me to come to terms with that notion that my one and only passion might not be the right thing for me. And that's, I think, a real good lesson I've learned. Because this is for the wider, this is my pearls of wisdom for the evening, if you like.
Yeah, please do.
Have intention in the world, go for it by all means, as long as it's within legal boundaries and halal boundaries if you're a Muslim. What I would say is that when you come to a point where you think, if it's not going anywhere, maybe there's another path, that have faith that actually there's another path that's better for you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine now, having relinquished the acting side of things, starting my own company, becoming a writer-director, and in a way, I couldn't think of anything more better than doing this, because I'm serving the artistic side of me while at the same time being Superman with a small s.
Alhamdulillah, that's brilliant.
That's great. It's a great story. And, I would imagine taking the plunge in setting something up, such as Arakan Creative, which has got a great remit, it seems, was not an easy decision, I can imagine. It can't have been something that was just done on a whim.
No, it was percolating in the back of my brain for years. And I suppose when I met Brother Lukman at Khayal Theatre in Luton.
Right.
Many years ago, as an actor, I was auditioning. I thought, well, wow, this is an amazing organisation. And I suppose it was those kind of things, along with constantly being sent for auditions to play the terrorist and the corner shop owner and this, that, and the other.
Right.
I was getting tired of it. Of course, it's a struggle for an actor from a Muslim background who cares about the faith and how they direct themselves in this career. Do I go for it? Do I not? And I was just getting tired of that typecast. I thought, I've got to start doing my own thing.
Yeah.
But how the ultimate question is how do you, because it is a big thing to start a company.
Yeah.
I was thankful. I mean, I took a bit of a plunge. I left my other job and I thought I'll just go for it. I got a small grant from a local organisation with a small play called Hijab, which was looking at what it really meant. It was like, what would the hijab say if it could speak? And then from there, it just kind of grew steadily. I've applied for funding from organisations I won't name this evening, but they've readily said no to me many times. But it's never been, it's firmed my resolution to keep going, because I just know in my heart and I feel it inside that this is the right thing and there's an audience out there. So, yeah, even to this day, we don't have the core funding. But, I believe never let money get in the way of trying to do a good thing, because eventually good things happen. And heck, I want to achieve some of the stuff by God's grace and the teams around me if it wasn't for simply going out with that good intention. So never let finances put you off. There's never going to be enough money in the world.
No.
So just go out and do the best you can.
No, very sound advice. And, to be honest, it's the way we've done stuff at Salaam Radio, to be quite honest, is that as long as your intentions are pure, and you're doing things for the right reasons, again, absolutely nailed it. With finances should not be a problem for you to progress. If Allah's the best of planners, as you rightly said, and if your intentions are pure, things will happen, inshallah, in the right way. So clearly, that's your story. It's worked well for us, and I think it's a great bit of advice to be putting out on a Friday night. Jenna, I think you had a follow-up question regarding the forming of Arakan Creative in terms of barriers, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just a short one. We were talking about how it must have been a little bit of a mental process to sort of start your own thing. Like you said, you had to plunge yourself into it a bit. But if you had to describe what personal barriers, or maybe not personal barriers, if there were any barriers other people were creating around you to stop you maybe from following the path of acting, because you could have achieved much more mainstream objectives had you kept up the professional acting and the auditioning. But what barriers were there for you?
Barriers, to be honest, I've always had a supportive, close family.
That's very important.
So there was no reservations per se. Okay. Obviously, you've got to be mindful. You've got to make sure you earn a living and do the best you can. In the hindsight, I may have made a couple of different decisions. I think putting all your eggs in one basket is not always the wisest move.
No.
For all the good intention in the world, you've got to be realistic and practical as well. But other than that, I think just the barriers have not really been within my circle. Okay. It's just convincing outside people. And despite the things that Arakan has achieved, even to this day, it's still a mission and a half to convince people. What else do I have to do to prove that I can deliver the goods and make a change and still fail in my funding applications? But again, it never stops me. I don't think there's been anything major barrier-wise.
That's good. Maybe Alhamdulillah, you can see. I mean, you didn't have an extensive budget, and you've made Frisia happen. And I suppose that's just one example of how you've not let barriers stop you. And alhamdulillah, I hope that progresses with your other projects, such as this comic book, which sounds like a brilliant idea coming through.
Inshallah.
Thank you. Yeah, it'll be into release soon. It's looking at, we've got set in the near future, 2027, and you've got a Muslim, Jewish, and Christian superheroes who are all retired, and then they are kind of endowed with superpowers, and they age reverse when they're in their Superman mode.
Wow.
That's their kind of disguise. And so, and it's about basically, a good story, hopefully, but obviously with those subliminal messages of working together, fighting the fight to make the world a better place.
It sounds like it's all your youthful Superman inspirations coming back.
Yeah, coming through, isn't it? It was actually was inspired by a brother called Naif Al-Mutawa, who founded the 99 in America, which are the comic book heroes based on the 99 names of Allah, each one having an attribute, which has become a phenomenal success. And that was one of the inspirations for it as well. But also because I'm straight myself, my father was from Pakistan, Muslim, and of course my mum is English, from Wakefield. Big shout out to the Wakey family who are watching, Elaine, etc. So I'm very much in tune with diversity, obviously, and seeing things from various points of view, and just making things work together, because it doesn't take much. It takes conversation sometimes at a bus stop, as the film reflects.
Yeah,
just cut some of those barriers down. Yeah. So I'd say if anyone has any questions about the other, whatever the other is, don't just wait for the headlines to feed your mind, or wait for the misinformation of TV or whatever. Go and just say hello to someone. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. absolutely.
Definitely. Just personally, Brother Connor, as a student studying A-level drama and theatre studies at the moment, and I do really enjoy it, I too have ambitions to be a screenwriter, inshallah, in the future. And I'm very aware it's a difficult area of work to get into and to sustain, you know, the flow of work. But what advice would you give to budding screenwriters like myself to really get a foot in the door and get started in the industry?
DIY. I would say do it yourself. And what I mean by that is you've got a film studio in your hands. You've got a mobile phone. Did you know there's a film called Tangerine made on 3 iPhone 5Ss?
Yes, I have heard of that. Yeah, made solely on a smartphone. Yeah.
Don't ever wait until Hollywood comes knocking. Chances are they might not. So I would say write what you know, write from the heart, because that will resonate with the audience. Don't try and write something that you've got no understanding of. Don't write science fiction if that's not your thing. So write what you know. Do short films, practice on your phone, make your mistakes, and you best make them in the quiet rather than the limelight. It's always best.
True, yeah.
And just flex your muscles. You might find that you're a bit of a director as well. And there are plenty of schemes now available for BAME writers, directors, to kind of bring them into the fold, because obviously representation is about 5% across the board. TV, film, and theatre, which is abysmal, considering when he was 17. And Lenny Henry, God bless that man, you know, he's fighting the good fight. And of course, hopefully that door will be kicked open a little bit further. But for now, the status quo is what it is. Yeah. So very much DIY, and obviously link up with any organisations such as Arakan. You know, I'll always be a fan of advice. I always believe in sending the lift back down, as Jack Lemmon coined the phrase, and as phrase. Never forget where you came from, because you were down there at one point, and anyone who walks around with their head in the clouds is going to trip up at some point. So and so the BBC Writers' Room has great places. Look at your local Screen initiative, like for example Screen Yorkshire would be ours. They've got lots of schemes. Creative England's a good one. Look at what's out there. Apply, and do a lot of things yourself. Use your friends to read your writing and see how it sounds. Use your phone to film it, and then prime yourself as best as you can, because your writers out there, the landscape is multicolored. It's not just about competing against our own community, it's the wider world. So I wish you well on all those who are entering the media field.
Thank you very much.
No, great advice, Brother Connor. Thank you so much. We've got a few minutes left. I mean, just again for our listeners, the film Frasier is out on August the 7th, brother. I think that's correct.
That's correct, inshallah. On August the 7th, let me just bring up the poster, because the dates I should know by heart. So we start. Basically, they're all one-off screenings in 14 locations around the UK. So I would urge people, yes, of course, attend, but try and book your tickets in advance, because they're just one-off screenings.
Right.
And it's been a mission and a half to get an independent film from the north onto those screens, like Odeon and the Picture House and AMC and stuff. So, you know, let's try and support this for future films as well. So we kick off 7th of August in Bradford. And then we go to the likes of Belfast, Birmingham, Leicester, Maidenhead, etc. All the details can be found on the website. May I read that out?
Of course, absolutely. Please do.
Yeah. So it's www.filmvault.limited, so Film Vault Limited Ltd, all one word, .com/Frasier, spelled FREESIA. If that's too much of a mouthful, just Google the term Frasier film and Arakan Creative, or any combination, and you'll find the links.
Fantastic.
So that's and beyond that, hopefully we'll look at maybe, you know, hopefully some TV deals and VOD, DVD before we start preparing for, inshallah, a sequel to this film, and ideally it's a trilogy in due course.
Inshallah. Sounds amazing. Connor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic, and luckily we're getting a bit of distortion on the line just in the last 30 seconds, so we've been all right up until now. But it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the success with this film. I can't wait to see it, and you and I will talk off air regarding the other little thing we spoke about regarding a screening in Peterborough, inshallah, at some point.
Inshallah, definitely. Look forward to that.
Salaam alaikum, brother, and jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Connor.
Thank you very much, mate. Nice meeting you both. Thank you.
And you.
Thank you.
That was Brother Connor. We have about 20 seconds left, listeners. You've been listening to Friday Night Prime. Ahmed Suleiman again with you next week, inshallah, with Brother Faisal Mahmood, who'll be back. Have a great weekend, and inshallah we will see you next week, 9 p.m. Assalamu alaikum.